Hi everyone, welcome back to Taji's World of Books and welcome to another author series recommendation video. Hey you guys, so I am back with more Pepper Winters. I'm going to be reviewing two of her series. I'm going to review her Dollar series, and I'm also going to be talking about Crown of Truth and Crown of Lies, or Throne of Truth and Crown of Lies. So, and I can't remember what that series is called. I don't remember. At any rate, let's get into it. Okay, so the Dollar series I have read before. This is my second time reading it through, and I wanted to read it because when I read it previously, I had not read Monsters in the Dark, nor had I read the Indebted series. And I knew that there were characters, particularly in the final book, Millions, that had to have a backstory and had to have something, because like I said, Pepper Winters tends to leave little Easter eggs for you. So I knew that there were more about the other characters, so I wanted to go back, read Monsters in the Dark, know who Tess and Q were, read the Indebted series, know who Jethro Hawk and Nyla Weaver are, and then reread this so I could really appreciate it. And I did. I'm so happy that I did it. Okay, so let me start off with book one. So there are 5 books in this series. Book one is Pennies. And I got to tell you that the first time around, I felt like this was a really tough book to read because this was my first foray into dark romances. This is a captor-captive. This is a trafficking situation. This is a, stealing and abducting women and selling them into sexual slavery into the black market. And I had never experienced that before or read that on page. And so I found that to be really, really tough to read. And as I reread it again, it's still difficult to read, but Pepper saves you. This first book is tough because this is about Tamsin, and Tamsin is at a party. Her mother is a psychologist. She studies psychopathy, so she studies criminals and criminal behavior. And she's hosting a party, and Tamsin is abducted from this party. And how the book starts off, like right away, she's already in the processing center, and she's writing to her diary, and she calls her diary No One. And she is being prepared to be sold off to her owner, or prepared to go to this market, which later is called the Quarterly Market of Beauties, but it's where women are auctioned off to the highest bidder. Okay, and so because of her mother's background of psychology, she kind of has an idea about the human condition and the human psyche, so she handles these guys that are selling her in a way that other girls don't necessarily know how to do. She's English, she's from the English countryside, and so she goes to the Quarterly Market of Beauties and she hatches a plan where she hears that they're basically auctioning and they're bidding on her, and they start the bid at something, and she basically says, $1 million, I offer to buy myself. And they're like, they had never experienced that before, so the auctioneer is like, what? Like $1 million? She's like, whatever. She goes, I'll buy myself. I'll pay you $1 million. And somebody then ups the bid and says 1.5. And the dude that ups the bid to 1.5 is a bastard. He is a disgusting bastard. I don't often have villains in the book that I'm just like, you disgust me, but Ulrich in this book is disgusting. And this book is so hard to read. So if you're not familiar with dark romance, if you are not able to stomach, you don't read it on page, but you know that it happens because Tamsin talks about her years of abuse, because she does it in her diary. And she does it in her diary and she says, well, I'm not gonna basically bore you or talk about the things that happened or what he did to me on that first night when he stole my virginity and he took me multiple times that night and made me bleed. She's like, I don't ever want to relive that, so I'm gonna just leave that in my memory. So there's a lot of those kind of recountings, but there's also recountings where you see that he takes clothes away from her. So she deprives him of her voice, so he deprives her of humanity, and he takes her clothes, so she becomes so accustomed to be in her skin that she is not used to clothes. It is just, this is a tough book to read. So please check out the trigger warnings. She is in captivity for 2 years. 2 years with this monster and his goons. And it's just awful. And in comes a guy named Elder Prest. And Elder Prest is a very complicated guy who basically makes ships, and he makes custom ships. And Ulrich is a multi-billionaire, and he commissions Elder Prest to make a ship for him. And that's how Elder comes in. And so that's in this first book. So just know, this series is, again, second time around, even though I knew what was going to happen, it was a 5 out of 5. It was a 5 out of 5 then. It's still one of my favorite series, but this first book is tough. It's really tough. So that's Pennies. And it is called Pennies because Elder basically says, "Oh, pennies, I'll give you a penny for your thought," basically. So then this next book, the second book, is Dollars. And this is where we really learn about Elder Prest. We learn who he is. This is a story of survival. It's about healing. It's about redemption. It's really like, what do we need in order to heal? And how do we heal? And what does that look like? And is Elder Prest a demon, a villain? Because he basically says, I'm not the good guy in this story, and don't expect me to be the good guy. But like, what is he really? And so this is about healing, redemption, recovery, and it's so good. And he studies, what's it called? Origami. And so he makes these little, out of dollars, he makes these little origami things and now Tamsin is now named Pimlico because in the Quarterly Market of Beauties, because she was kidnapped on the Pimlico exit on the tube, they basically call her Pimlico. So that is her slave name, and that's the name she takes on. So this is about Elder. We learn more about Elder and Elder's history here. Hundreds, the story continues. It's more about her healing. It's about Elder's story. It's about the coming together. It's about her trusting, learning to trust, him learning to trust. It's just absolutely amazing. Every book gets better and better and better. It's so good. You know, I love it. He said, "Seduced and claim, Elder no longer just demands my voice. He commands me to be the thief that I am, and I refuse." And so it's interesting because Elder sort of coaxes her out of this selective mutism to help her find her voice again and what that means. But once she finds her voice, who is she, and does she want to be with him, and is she with him for choice, or how does that really all play out? So this is literally what's happening in each of these books. You know, she's like, you know, Elder gave me my life back. You know, he's become everything to me. So what does this really mean? And there's some drama that goes down here where some stuff happens under Elder's watch. I think here we're also introduced again to Jethro Hawk and Nyla Weaver, and you are taken back to Hawks Ridge Manor, and those are from the Indebted series, so they are very much present in this book. And so you just are like, wow. And so now that I understand Jethro and the Hawks, and I understand his condition, and I understand Nyla, their introduction and the things that happen in this book, I totally get it now, because before it was like, huh, that's interesting. Like, I didn't miss anything, but it just made it a richer experience now that I have read the Indebted series. So this is like where everything has really come together, and everything has really come together where Pam and Elder are literally on the same page and working together, and something happens and things just go awry, and there's just a crazy twist, and it just is, you're just like, what? And it totally ends on a cliffhanger, and so you're just like, I can't wait. I need to pick up this next book to find out how this all goes down, because how can this happen after everything, after all this work? How can this happen? So literally, this is about captivity, being stolen, right, and being in slavery, and experiencing all sorts of trauma. Then this is phase 1 of healing, right? Finding your voice and doing some other things, and then also trying to discover what it is you really want, and having a choice to decide what it is you really want, and really trying to figure out, like, if I'm given too much choice, is too much choice, is that detrimental, or what does that mean? And then all coming together, and then having a total twist happen, right? And then this final book, I loved it because now we are introduced to Tess and Q. And so Tess and Q come in a major way in this story, and things are going topsy-turvy and left and right, and you're just like, oh my gosh, you're pissed, you're happy, you're all in. You just don't know like which direction things are going to go. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it delivers in so many ways. There's some things that are revealed and the way that Q does it, and Q and Elder are alphas, and so how are they going to clash and come together, and what does this look like? And this is a perfect wrap up to an intense story. It's really, really good. You guys, if you have not read this series, it is absolutely one of my favorite dark romances. Captor Captive, Pepper Winters. I'm gonna say, like, Pepper keeps delivering Monsters in the Dark, Indebted, the Dollar series. It just keeps giving in many ways. So if you haven't read it, please check it out. It's well worth it. Like I said, this is my second time around reading it, and I loved it. I loved it. And so then Pepper gives you like little Easter eggs. And so at the end of this book, you know, at the end of this book, Elder talks about being homeless on the streets of New York and what that was like. And he was like, you know what? I was on the streets of New York and I was homeless. And he goes, there was only one other dude that was with me, and his name is Penn Everett. And he was like, you know, the type of guy that was like a shadow in the dark. And he was the only one that really understood. And, you know, I wonder what happened to him. And one night he just disappeared and no one ever heard from him again. And I often wonder what happened to him. And that, like, it's a conversation that they're having about, you know, homelessness and like life before, what life is like now. And so guess what? Penn Everett. So she goes ahead and she gave that little Easter. I was like, who's Penn? Just like they talk about Celix. Celix is Celix is Elder's right-hand man. They talk a lot about Celix and stuff that happened in the past with Celix. And I'm like, I was digging, trying to see if she did another series on Celix. And I won't be surprised. She hasn't. I haven't found anything. And I wouldn't be surprised if she writes about Celix in the future, because there's so much about his past and his loss and why he's so alone and depressed and like loss of a child, something that happened to him with his wife. And so I want to know his story. So I'm waiting to see what Pepper does. But in the meantime, she did write about Penn Everett. So this is a duet. The first book is Crown of Lies and the second book is Throne of Truth. Now, let me say this. This book had a trope in it that I tend to dislike strongly. I can't stand it. But Pepper handled it well. The trope is when people jump to conclusions and they think that they know, and they like make all these assumptions. Like they look at a person and make all these assumptions about a person, whether it be the heroine or hero. They make all these assumptions and they formulate opinions and they make decisions and they run off and they do this stuff and they don't have any interaction because they're like, I refuse to see you because you've done blah, blah, blah. And none of it's true, but it's all like based on their assumption. I can't stand that, because a lot of stuff could be resolved if people would just talk. Like I feel like I was in this book like going, oh my God, just freaking talk to her. And the same thing with this book. I was just like, will you stop freaking dragging it out? He's like, oh, well, I'm not gonna reveal it if you can't remember. What? I don't have time for that. But even though I was yelling at this book, I still gave him 5 out of 5 stars. It was still really good, and she still handled it really well, and I still loved it. So let me tell you about it. Okay, so The Crown of Lies is about an heiress, and her name is Noelle, and they call her Elle, and she is think of Saks Fifth Avenue. Her family runs like a Saks Fifth Avenue, basically, and it's been in her family for generations upon generations. Her mother has died when she's very young. She's an only child. She lives with her father. Her father is running the business, and the book starts off with she's like at her like 14th birthday, or she's quite young. I can't remember. Very young. She's very young, and the father basically has her sign papers, and he says, like, look, this empire is going to be yours. It's all set up. I've had my will adjusted. You know, don't worry, you're not going to do it now, but I want to just make sure that you know that this is your legacy and this is what is going to be expected of you. So that's when she's 14. Fast forward, then that's the prologue. Fast forward, she's 18. She's 18 years old, 18, 19, something like that. And she has thrown herself into her work. She stopped going to school very early on because she's pretty much a genius. She's learned everything that she can. And she's been running her business and doing P&Ls and, you know, profits and loss statements. And she's been running the corporation alongside her father, learning her trade, preparing herself to take over. So she has not lived the life of a typical teenager. She's never had a boyfriend. She's never been kissed. She's had no experience to speak of. She has a driver. She has her dad. Like, she's sheltered in so many ways. So she decides on the night of her 18th, it's either her 18th or 19th birthday. She decides on her 18th, 19th birthday that she's like, I need to live. Like, I haven't even been out. Like, I don't even know my way around New York. I live in the middle of New York City, and like, I go from pillar to post because I'm shuttled by my driver to like whatever. I've never experienced anything. I'm gonna set out and do stuff. So she goes downstairs to her showroom and she outfits herself because she's always like decked out in like head to toe like gear, Prada, Gucci, like everything. She's like, I can't go out in like stilettos and my Louboutin. Like, I have to, like, you know, I gotta dress like a commoner. So she goes downstairs and she collects like stuff off the mannequins and she puts together this outfit. And she grabs like $300 cash from the register and she goes out in New York and she's like, I'm going out on a night on the town and I'm just gonna experience life. Like, I've never ordered a taco from a street vendor, and I haven't even, she like goes to the store to get something to drink, and she doesn't know how to interact in conversation because she's never had to interact with somebody her own age that she wasn't directing as a boss, right? And so, of course, as things go, something happens and she's assaulted. And as a result of this assault, she's rescued by this dude. And this dude basically, like, they strike up an immediate connection. And he walks her home and things happen. And it's love at first sight. It's just a love at first sight. And they go to Central Park and they're like making out in Central Park. And to make a long story short, they get accosted. And they get separated, and he gets arrested, and she doesn't see him again. She doesn't even know his name, knows nothing about him. And the story really unfolds from there. And so it's like, then fast forward I think it's like 3 years later. It's either 7 years later or 3 years. I think it's 3 years later. No, it's 7 years later. It's 7 years later. Then, you know, her life picks up. She's running her business. I think she's like 21. She's at a restaurant and her dad is trying to hook her up with this dude, and she's uninterested. And this guy comes in and he's like this random dude, and he is interested in her, and she instantly dislikes him. So it's an enemies situation. It's an absolute enemies situation moving forward, and it's an enemies to lovers, but it's also a suspense in that something is going down. There's a mystery. She's trying to figure out what's happening. She's trying to figure out who he is. She's looking for the guy she calls nameless or no name. She wants to find him, the guy that she struck it up in the park with. But there's so many secrets and lies going back and forth between all the people in this book that it is angst-ridden enemies situation. Then it becomes a fake dating situation. So you've got an enemies to lovers, fake dating, romantic suspense, and lies and deception and deceit and kidnappings, and a lot of stuff is going down in this book. And so it's really angsty, it's really good, it's action-packed, it's a page turner, you don't want to put it down. It ends at a cliffhanger that you're like, what the hell? You know, there is a non-consensual, there's a couple non-consensual situations. I think Pepper calls this, it's not a dark romance, it's a gray romance, in that there are some strong themes, but it's not like crazy. Like, you can tolerate it. It's good. So that is Crown of Lies. Super, super good. Okay, so then the follow-up is Throne of Truth, and this is where all the truths and the deceptions and everything needs to come out from everybody's past, from everything that was being withheld, and everybody needs to come clean, and people drag their feet, and they just are like, can you not get it? You don't understand. Like, there's a lot going on. Mysteries are being solved. There is like, whether we're coming together, are we fake dating? Are we actually engaged? Like, what's happening? What does this all mean? And so it's really a nice conclusion and a wrap up. And I have to say, like, at the end, the way that she resolved everything with these characters, when I read this, I haven't had book hangover in a long time, but I was in book hangover heaven. Like, I was like, I need more of these guys. Like, I absolutely loved their story. It was so good. It's a story of redemption. It's a story of forgiveness. It's survival. It's not survival like in the Dollar series, like overcoming like trauma, but this dude goes through some stuff, like in the underbelly, in the prison, in the underworld. And like, how do you come through that and still be who you are and still give back and still like want to help and support people? So this was a for sure 5 out of 5 star So good. I'm so happy that I read this. And again, I don't know, I think that this series is called what's it called? Truth and Lies. That's what it's called. It's called Truth and Lies Duet, and she classifies it as erotic romance, or gray romance. It's spicy, it's steamy. On the spicy sort of like sexy time, it's like probably the four whatever in spice, but like in terms of like, you know, you're all in with the storyline and the character development and the plot and the arc, it's like a 5 for sure. It's really good. So you guys, I have yammered on so much about this series. It was absolutely amazing. Pepper Winters is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. I haven't read anything by Pepper Winters that I did not like. Her MC one was like, I wasn't like, it was good, but it wasn't like, whoo, blow me away good like everything else. That probably is my least favorite of hers, but everything else like I read of hers, I absolutely, hands down, love it, can't get enough. She writes it, I'm buying. Her and Kay Webster. Kay Webster writes something, I'm buying it. If Pepper Winters writes it, I'm buying it and all in. So I hope that you guys want to check this out. I hope I encourage you to want to read it. It's so good. So add it to your list for sure. And so I'll be back. I'm reading now her Goddess Isles series, so I'll be back with more of that. Like I said, I'm doing deep dives and I'm giving it to you in snippets, and so I'm hoping that you guys are gobbling it up the way that I am. So you know that I upload new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So if you like, please like and subscribe. Come hang out with me some more, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!